Hello, lovely friend. I am Dr. Mary Barson.
And I'm Dr. Lucy Burns.
And this is the Real Health and Weight Loss Podcast.
Good morning, my gorgeous friend. How are you today? Dr. Lucy here on what is a lovely Tuesday morning here in Melbourne as we record or send this out to the universe. I hope you are all happy, healthy and well. And I am, of course, joined by the fantastic, the fabulous, the flamboyant Dr. Mary. How are you?
I'm fabulous, flamboyant Lucy. I'm really good. Slightly wind blown though. With currently Victoria, where we both live, is getting near cyclonic level winds with these enormous low fronts that are coming through. And it's quite frightening. It took me about 45 minutes to make a 10-minute drive home yesterday. I actually had to stop and do a coaching call in the car because I pulled over. I was very safe and found a place to park because I couldn't get home because all of the roads were blocked by fallen trees. So it's all been a bit dramatic. But I'm well. Everyone's safe. We're all good. We have electricity, which is better than a lot of people currently in our state.
Absolutely. And, you know, this is life. As we've mentioned many times, life doesn't throw you a curveball. Life is a curveball.
That's right.
Life is a series of storms, some mild, some more severe, that we, develop skills enough to be resilient enough to weather the storms.
And one, I think, quite surprising part, or at least surprising for me, that I've learned about in recent years, a surprising part of resilience, both physical and emotional resilience, is your gut. How healthy your gut is. I find it fascinating, and science is learning more and more about the gut. This incredibly fabulous organ was, I think, kind of a bit dismissed, even as recently as 20 years ago. You just sort of, digested your food, big whoop, that's great, but, nothing compared to the brain, the heart, the liver. But actually, the gut is extraordinary and extraordinarily important for weight loss, for well-being, for your mental health, for lots and lots of things. And there is a lot of, I reckon it's fair to say, hype and possibly woo out there about gut health. I know that it's very topical, and there are lots of, pills and potions that are sold to people to improve their gut, lots of expensive tests that people can do about their gut health. And I'm not making broad generalizations that all of these are useless, but I think it could be really good to revisit ways, the simple, cheap, often completely free and powerful ways that you can nurture your gut into a good balance and good health that doesn't involve, any cash at all.
Indeed. And this is, you're absolutely right. Whenever something's topical, there are clever, let's call them clever people that will exploit that need for people to want information or look for the silver bullet. So the quick fix, the magic potion. And yes, there's dozens of supplements of varying qualities, and the tricky bit is that the popularity of those supplements largely depends on the marketing machine behind them.
Yes, that's right. Not necessarily their safety or efficacy.
Indeed. And in fact, what they're even doing is using studies that aren't done on their particular product. So their particular product, let's say, might have 5 components to it. And so what they'll do is they'll get studies on the 5 separate components and say, see, we're bringing all these together. And in fact, that's not how science works.
No. And it's not well regulated as well. It's, in Australia, we've got the TGA, the Therapeutic Goods Administration, and they do lots of things. But with regards to supplements, the main role is that companies that sell these products just need to prove that they're safe, not that they are effective.
Indeed.
Yes.
So interesting, isn't it?
It is. I reckon it could be good to dive into a little moment and for us to all just focus in on our fabulous gut and take a moment to, explore and appreciate all of the incredible things that it does, because there is so much to it.
Mm.
It, yeah, like there is a very strong connection, like literal connection between our gut and our brain. Many people know this now. They're called the gut-brain axis.
Mm.
And mental health. Uh, mental health, in a large part, starts in your gut. And this is a good reason why you want to pay attention to your gut. Your gut isn't just about digestion. It's connected to our brain, through an enteric nervous system and through multiple ways in which our brain and our gut connect to each other. We've got in our gut, we've got this, it's called the enteric nervous system. Enteric is like a doctory word for gut. The gut nervous system has got about 500 million neurons in it. So
Mm.
it's nearly as complex as our brain. And indeed, there is a movement now in some parts of psychology and medicine to actually refer to the enteric nervous system as our gut brain. So we have a head brain and a gut brain, and it's incredibly important.
Mm.
And yet the system amazingly can operate independently, and it influences digestion, and it also possibly influences our emotions. So
So
emotions can
fascinating.
arise in this gut, this whole idea, I've got a gut feeling, probably
Yes.
is quite literally true. And yeah,
Well, I think you only have to think about the butterflies feeling. Like when people are nervous, it's described as butterflies. Where do we feel? Nobody's getting butterflies in their knee. You get it in your gut. So
yes,
yes, it
yeah.
is. It's amazing.
And a lot of these studies are still at the animal level. Like there
Hmm.
isn't the data about humans is still emerging, but it's extremely interesting to look at and think about. The other incredible thing that our gut does is it's this great immune system organ. Like
Mm.
80% of our immune system resides in the gut,
Mm.
which is more than anywhere else. And um, it's crucial for modulating our immune system and for keeping our immune system under control, reducing, autoimmune. If I've got good gut health, we can dampen down autoimmune responses, we can dampen down inflammation. But conversely, if our gut health is not where we want it to be, then you can have increased inflammation and all the problems that are associated with that.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's fascinating. I mean, if we think about the appendix, which is, most people will know the appendix is it's a little just a little pocket that of off our bowel and it sometimes gets infected when if it gets blocked and things like that. And so it gets removed and most people think no big deal. However, we do know that in the appendix there are gazillions of immune cells and it's another big pocket of our um, a reservoir, I guess is a good word, of immune uh, function. And I'm sure maybe back in the olden days, as before we sort of evolved to eat the way we eat, it was probably bigger and it wasn't just a little appendage, a little add on.
Mm. And yeah, I mean, obviously we can live without it, but it doesn't mean to say that it doesn't have a role.
Indeed.
Our gut microbiome affects so many things in our life. It affects our mood, it affects our inflammation levels, it also affects our weight in ways
Mm.
that are becoming more and more understood. There's the Harvard University has done studies looking at the gut microbiome, comparing American gut microbiomes on average to African gut microbiomes, and looking at the averages and all the different types of microbes and the ratios and amounts. And this is interesting because in Africa there's much less obesity than there is in America, although the rest of the world is catching up to the Western world when it comes
Mm.
to obesity levels. So this may not be true for very long. And two famous groups of bacteria are the Firmicutes and the Bacteroides. And these studies have shown that that on average, African microbiomes have got much more of the Bacteroides and less of the Firmicutes, and vice versa. And
Mm.
Firmicutes is associated with having increased risk, having more Firmicutes than the Bacteroides, having the sort of the balance out of whack, is strongly associated with obesity.
Mm.
And it's hypothesized probably because the one thing that this bacteria family does in our gut is it's really good at extracting all of the energy out of food.
Indeed.
And
Which is
whereas
why calorie counting is garbage.
Totally,
Just
totally.
bringing it back to that.
That's right. You can count all the calories you want, but you can't necessarily you can't account for what your gut microbiome is then going to do with the fuel that you eat. Whereas Bacteroides has more of a role in breaking down plant fiber. So that's very interesting. And we also know that it's not so much about individual populations of gut bacteria. It's more about the overall ecosystem and having a nice diversity and overall having lots of different bacteria in there without one particularly taking over or one important group being completely absent. So I like the analogy that it's you want your gut microbiome to be like, a rainforest. We've got beautiful temperate rainforest here. It's very windblown at the moment, but it is there. And it's got mountain ash, and it's got all different types of acacias and different eucalypts, and it's got mosses, and it's got lichen and beautiful tree ferns and beeches, and all of these different trees and plants make up this gorgeous temperate rainforest. And it's not just mountain ash, and it's not just moss, and it's not just acacia. It's all of them all mixed together to make this vibrant natural environment that supports this fabulous ecosystem. And it's kind of the same with our gut. We want that beautiful temperate rainforest. We don't want, a pine plantation monoculture. Even though there's nothing necessarily wrong with pine trees and nothing wrong with the bacterial equivalent of pine trees in your gut, it's the diversity that you want.
Yes. I often think of it like a herb garden. And
I
again,
like that.
You've got all the different herbs, but if mint takes over, you end up with no herbs. You just end up with a mint garden. Nothing wrong with mint, but
I have had a few mint gardens in my life, being as I am not a particularly dedicated gardener. Yeah.
Yes. But again, that's actually a great analogy, because if you don't look after your biome, then mint will reign supreme. Or
that's right.
In this case, probably Firmicutes.
That's it.
Firmicutes is the mint of the
That's
gut
right.
microbiome.
That's right. And look, I may not be a particularly dedicated gardener of my outside garden, but I do like to think I'm fairly dedicated to being a gardener of my internal garden.
Indeed.
Looking after my lovely gut to ensure that it can also look after me. Yeah, when I first started learning about gut health and its importance, I actually felt really deflated by it, because what I was learning about, how to have a great gut microbiome, it was, natural vaginal birth, so important. That moment where the baby comes out, because a little newborn baby doesn't have any gut microbes yet. And then as it moves through the birth canal, it picks up the microbes from the mother's vagina, and that seeds, the first little seeds of that healthy development of the gut microbiome. I was born by a extremely emergent but life-saving emergency Caesar, and so were both of my kids. So I was like, oh, well, that just sucks, doesn't it? And then it's, that lovely Bacteroides can be transmitted through breastfeeding, and breastfeeding really helps nurture the gut. And I'm like, again, my mum wasn't able, for very important reasons, to breastfeed me. And I also had really significant difficulty exclusively breastfeeding my children. I couldn't do it. Heartbreaking at the time. We won't go into it, but I couldn't. And then also I was an unwell baby. I was an unwell neonate, partly because of the complications of pregnancy, which were just bad luck. And I was filled with antibiotics. And then I was prone to infections as a kid. So I got lots and lots of antibiotics as a kid. And, that's the other thing, that to help nurture a healthy gut microbiome, in short, limit antibiotics in early life. So I'd read that and I'd be like, well, I'm doomed. I was like, this is
Jump
rubbish
off the cliff right now.
And I hated gut health. Anyone mentioned gut health, I go, I just don't want to talk about that. But I was able to do a little bit of a mind flip on this and realised, which is helpful. Of course, none of us can control how we were born. None of us can control how we were fed. None of us can control whether or not we needed antibiotics or got antibiotics as a kid. Even now, sometimes we need antibiotics. All of these things are outside of our control. So I don't find them very helpful to dwell on at all. But what I've discovered is there actually is an enormous amount that you can do right now, here, to improve that lovely inner garden and make it a gorgeous herb garden with the mint in control and not taking over.
Yes.
And that's what you can focus your energy on, that without feeling defeated about the fact, well, you know, either an emergency Caesar or I died. I suppose I'd prefer that, but geez, I'm going to have bad gut health forever. Isn't that terrible? No, that is not the case.
No, it's definitely not the case. And I think the interesting thing is that, as you said, we can, you know, the gut microbiome does develop in the first few years of life. There are things that we can do to improve that. And again, you don't as a baby, you don't get a choice. Am I vaginal delivery or a Caesar? But, you know, we're now recognizing that the enormous amount of antibacterial lotions and wipes and things like that we probably don't really need. And I'm quite glad that my kids crawled around on the floor and you know, rolled around in the grass and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, get grubby.
Yeah. Grubby's good. Grubby's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect, that's for sure. But as you said, what are the things that we could actually do now, though? So let's say fast forward to you know, Dr. Mary, now 42-year-old woman, 42 years past her Caesar and unbreastfedness.
That's it.
What are the things that you do to look after your gut now?
Yeah, we have a framework that I like to think about it. Yes, and we call it the 5R framework. We've added another R in the last few years. I think last time we talked about this, it was a 4R framework, and these are all things that we can all do. So, first, I'll say, just before I go into the 5R framework, I will say that we do know that one of the things that most profoundly affects our gut microbiome is our diet and how we nourish ourselves. So that's extremely important, and that we can really shift and move our gut microbiome by shifting and moving the way that we nourish our beautiful bodies.
Which makes complete sense, really, isn't it? Because your gut is a tube, and you're putting stuff into the tube.
Exactly, it is a tube. It's a tube. Yeah, it goes tube from our mouth all the way through to our anus, and technically everything that we put inside our gut is technically outside our body. I think it's because we're a really, really complicated, elongated donut. Yes.
I was thinking more like a sea cucumber, but
sea cucumber might be better. Yeah. You know, we're all animals. Yeah. Okay, so 5R framework. Number one, just the first one that we use is rest. So rest can mean lots of things, but what rest is in our 5R framework is rest from food. And just spending a bit of time where you're not eating, and I'm only talking about, you know, short, intermittent fasting periods of time, can be really beneficial on the gut. And we know this, a lot of this data comes from mouse studies, but also looking at people who've done Ramadan fasting for religious purposes. We know lots about fasting and the health benefits of fasting from generous people during Ramadan who have allowed scientists to study them, including studying their poo. So I'd like to thank all of those people and what we've been able to learn from them. So fasting is a really powerful way to improve your gut. It helps improve gut microbiome diversity, sort of can knock off any like particular branches of bacteria that are getting a bit minty and wanting to take over. It can help sort of knock them back down. It's a useful way to kind of, you know, weed the garden. It's powerfully anti-inflammatory as well for the gut, and it doesn't have to be long. You know, even like 12 hours is still enough time to rest your gut and to get a little bit of time where your gut is able to enjoy these resting benefits. It can,
I was just going to say, it makes sense too. Like I was talking to somebody, one of my coaching clients today, about the idea that the humans, we're not cows, we're not designed to eat all day. We're not designed to ruminate our food. We don't have a gut that's like that. Our gut is designed to have a meal, then have a rest, then have a meal, then have a rest. And when we keep piling things into it, then it doesn't get the downtime to rest. It's just constantly working like a cow's gut. Rum, 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 rum. And so it makes sense then when we give it a big rest overnight potentially, but also between meals. And I was saying it's a bit like if let's say you're at work and you've got 3 jobs that you need to do for the day, but somebody keeps coming in and just sort of giving you a few little extra jobs along the way. You don't have time to do your 3 big jobs. It's like,
Yep, and the day gets taken up, and then you've done,
yeah,
a poorer job on those, a poorer output on those 3 jobs that you would have done. Absolutely, yes,
yeah.
yes. We also know that when we fast for a little while, we get an increase in the production of these beneficial short-chain fatty acids. This has been shown in both observational human studies and mice studies. And these short-chain fatty acids are a fuel source, and they're a fabulous fuel source for the lining of our gut. They love it. It's their favourite thing. And our gut, when we give our body a chance, we can make these, and we make more of them when we rest our gut for a little while. So resting is actually nourishing for your gut as well as resting. It's good stuff.
And when we're feeding the lining, the colonocytes in particular, well, that makes them a bit more robust. So if you think of them as like skin on the inside, it's good. It's a good barrier protection then for the body.
It is. We haven't gone into intestinal permeability now, which is a big topic, but yes, you want to have a really nice, integral, healthy barrier to your gut, and everything we're talking about that will help with that.
Good. All right. Next one. What's next? The next R.
The next R is remove. And we talk about removing the foods in particular that are unhelpful for our gut health. And, 2 words really can sum this up: processed foods. That's
I was going to go ultra processed.
3 words: ultra processed foods. Yes, I think that's probably better. So these have got lots of harmful substances in them that can disrupt both the lining of our gut, be harmful for our gut microbiome, irritate our gut, do lots of bad things. Like there's surfactants in soaps, essentially, in processed foods, which improves their shelf life and improves their mouthfeel, but is not at all good for our gut. A lot of preservatives and processed the preservatives in processed food can knock off our gut bacteria. It's harmful, and the less we have, the better we will be. So removing ultra-processed foods is key, really, to improving your gut health.
And I think you're right. I mean, in some parts of our society, people's diet is 80% ultra-processed food. And our bodies just aren't coping with it. It doesn't mean that if if let's say you have a Mars fun size bite, that you're going to suddenly drop dead of gut dysbiosis by having one small ultra processed product. Like, it's not about that. It's the amount, the quantity, and the longevity of having that. So if you do it every day for years, your gut's gonna be very, very sad. I don't even know that mint. Well, actually, it'll be worse than mint. What's worse than mint? Ivy.
Ivy, yeah, absolutely. Something you can't even eat. Yeah, that's right. But you can turn it around. Like this is changeable. This is it's never too late and never too hard to improve your gut health. And you can break up with ultra-processed foods. And there are other things that are good to remove, like, stress and sedentary behavior, but we talk about those a little bit more. So the remove is really about the ultra-processed foods.
Yeah.
And then the next R is replace. So this is, if you're, cutting out those ultra-processed foods, you want to replace your nutrition, how you are nourishing your beautiful body, with healthy whole foods that nourish the gut. And essentially any real food. is going to be good for your gut. And there are some foods that are particularly good that can be extremely helpful. But any of your nuts, seeds, meat, fish, seafood, organ meat, fantastic. So nutritious, good for your gut. I reckon we could do a podcast on organ meat, I reckon, perhaps.
I'm still not eating it. Just
I know
saying.
you're not eating it.
People out there.
I'll get Lucy onto it, and then we'll do a podcast.
I'll be a convert.
A little bit goes a long way. But real foods, they are really helpful, and they nourish your gut, give your gut what it needs. Some other foods that I think it's good to incorporate is to eat a variety of plant foods in particular. I know that they're in the low carb movement. There are people who will really dismiss the benefits of plant foods and really focus more on animal foods. But we're of the opinion that they're both helpful. There are really helpful things in eating plant foods and helpful things in eating animal foods. And you can, if you want to, focus mostly on the animal or entirely if that is your choice, or mostly on the plants or entirely if that's your choice. Following the principles of real food, you can figure out what works for you. And in terms of gut health, they are both beneficial. That is what the science shows us. And also thinking about the variety, you don't need to go absolutely crazy, with eating an enormous variety of plant foods. There are some studies looking at people who had 30 different plant foods in a week and they had a better gut microbiome than people who had less. But those were observational studies with a lot of healthy user bias and problems in them. So instead, I think it could be helpful to just think over your day and try and get different colours of plant foods. And that could just be a useful way to think about it. Get a bit of red, get a bit of green, get a bit of brown. And maybe, just 3 a day would probably be fine. Like, I think that's a reasonable suggestion. It's not like you need to have 10 different colours every day.
So a few little hacks I reckon that you can do to add in, my seed cracker recipe.
I do. It's yummy.
That's got 5 different types of
It does.
plants.
Yeah,
really.
that's right.
I know. It's like seeds, plants. Yeah, it's 5 different ones. And that's
totally.
in one cracker.
It is. I made your hemp seed porridge this morning. And that's got 3. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
You've just done 3 right there without trying very hard. Yeah, there is, And
especially if you add
spices.
some. Yeah, they all count. If you add some berries to that hemp seed porridge, you've actually got 4.
Totally,
So,
exactly.
And a squirt of peanut butter, you've actually got 5.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. So it can absolutely add up. And all of those different foods have got different nutrient profiles. They've got different beneficial plant chemicals or phytonutrients and different types of phenols that are in there, but they're just helpful. But animal foods, animal fibers are also really helpful for our gut. So thinking about having different types of animal foods is good. And in particular, getting a bit of fish in your diet as well, red meat in your diet, all of these things are helpful. So it's real food. It's delicious. It's yummy. Check out Lucy's recipes. They're amazing. I use them all the time.
And we are the worst cooks ever. So,
man, totally.
Yeah, I'm not spending a long time in the kitchen. In and out.
No.
Bang for your buck is what we want.
That's right. I reckon, 20 minutes max is how much time I want to spend making dinner. Less, if possible.
Yeah. So in this replacing, is this where we talk about the prebiotics?
I think this is. And we sort of have been talking about this, but not specifically yet. So prebiotics, confusing term, prebiotics and probiotics. Prebiotics are fibers essentially that come from plant foods that are food for lots of the different little microorganisms in our gut. And some bacteria have, each bacteria has its preferred food. And so that's why it's helpful to have a variety of these prebiotics. And essentially it's fibers that fiber that we eat that doesn't get completely digested by our stomach and small intestine and goes through relatively intact throughout our gut. So the bacteria in the different parts of our gut can then break it down. Bacteroides loves to do this. Bacteroides being the helpful bacteria we were talking about before. So prebiotic foods are all of your plant foods that have got some fiber in them. And they're great. And we really do want to think about incorporating them into our diet each day that you're choosing to eat. And then probiotics is good because that comes back. there's a nice little segue into the next R, which is the re-inoculate.
Yes.
We called it that just because we wanted to stick with the R, the alliteration, but it's not exactly inoculating your gut. The probiotics are beneficial bacteria or sometimes yeast that we eat, and they go through into our gut. They usually don't hang around for long, though. They don't normally stay and colonize the gut. They do sometimes, but not usually. Most of us have got a fairly well-established gut microbiome, like, the little ecosystem in there. And the only ways to really shift that dramatically is by changing your food. You could also do a fecal transplant, which is outside the scope of what we're talking about right now, I think. But
Indeed.
just for completion, that does also work. But they do have a helpful effect on our gut. It's really interesting. We eat probiotics in the form of fermented foods like sauerkraut, which is probably my favorite fermented food, or drinks like kefir or kombucha, which is probably my favorite drink. And these beneficial bacteria, they go down into our gut and they talk. Probably not with actual words, but they communicate and have an effect on the gut, that are the bacteria that are already there. And one thing that we're almost certain that they do is they sort of put the brakes on one particular type of bacteria overgrowing. So they kind of just sort of dampen down the growth and keep it all kind of nice and even. So they're sort of like out there sort of gardening. If the mint is taking over, they're kind of, plucking out some mint. They're a gardener. Exactly. Yeah. Yes. They're like gardeners in our garden that we eat. And they hang around for a few weeks, possibly a few months, and then they're gone. So they have this role in supporting the gut microbiome is there and in supporting the immune function of our gut. And it's really important that we get them. And we can get bacteria from, grubby bubbies out there playing in the dirt. They're ingesting bacteria, that's a probiotic thing to do. But a great way to get them is from fermented foods and fermented drinks.
Yogurt.
Lucy,
Again, a yogurt.
Yeah.
But we've got to, not all yogurts are created equally. So, I'm a big fan of Greek yogurt. I've tried, and even within the Greek yogurt, there's different ones that I just prefer the taste of. But a lot of yogurt these days has very little bacteria in it and a lot of preservatives, emulsifiers, sugar, flavorings, and colorings. And so it's like, that's probably not ideal. So, but the interesting thing is that when I was a sugarholic, so when I ate a lot of sugar, I hated yogurt because it was too sour. My taste buds weren't adapted. Now that I eat very little sweet foods, that I actually love it. It's beautiful. It's like, ooh. So berries and yogurt to me is now, it's what I would eat instead of, in the olden days where I would eat red and white, whatever they're called, white bullets with the red inside.
Oh, yes, I know those.
Yeah.
Those raspberry bullet things. Yes,
raspberry bullet things. Yeah. Now I'll have a raspberry yogurt thing.
I get the frozen berries and mash them into Greek yogurt, and my children call it ice cream. Actually, That's not true. My toddler calls it ice cream. My 11-year-old has cottoned on that is not true. But they love it too, because their taste buds are such that berries and yogurt is fabulous for them. I love
Absolutely.
it too.
Yes. Okay, so we're up to the last R now.
My favourite R possibly is rebalance. We've talked about this sort of information superhighway between the gut and the enteric nervous system and our brain, and it goes both ways. Our brain communicates with our gut via the vagus nerve and vice versa. And also, it's amazing, but our gut microbiome actually can directly communicate with our brain as well through neurotransmitters and hormones. And we didn't even mention that the gut is really hormonally active, and most of our body's serotonin actually resides in the gut. It's a very, very, very complex, fabulous organ. And it's a two-way street, and there are many things that we can do in how we behave and what we do throughout the day that can help rebalance our gut, keep the enteric nervous system in balance, nice and calm, and also directly impact our gut microbiome. So it's not just food. Food's probably the most important, but it isn't just food. Things like sleep and your circadian rhythm. Our gut has its own circadian rhythm. It follows a 24-hour cycle, and we can see differences in the activity and the numbers of gut microbiome throughout the day. So it's got its own little internal clock, and it's linked to our circadian rhythms. They are joined. And so, yes, this intestinal microbiome is regulated through these intrinsic clocks. But it has its own clock and, the host organism, which is us, our clock as well. And so getting enough sleep is going to help improve your gut function and diversity. I think that's really fascinating. So
Absolutely.
getting some morning sunlight, prioritizing your sleep, having a helpful sleep routine, having a healthy relationship with sleep, having a positive outlook about your bed, all of these factors will improve your gut.
Indeed. And again, I love getting on my high horse, but it still just comes back then to why do people, particularly trainers, PTs, not all PTs, if you're a PT out there who doesn't just espouse calorie counting, this is why I get so cross, because we're complex but simple, but we're not so simple that it's just maths in, calories in, calories out. It's not that simple. It is, we're a whole diverse being, and we need to look at all aspects of our health if we want, if weight loss is our ultimate outcome. And this is where I love this idea. I mean, we talk about it all the time, but, to be healthy on the inside, including your gut, is how you glow on the outside.
Yes. That's it. And so sleep, an essential part of the rebalance, as is managing your stress. So stress is bad for our gut, bad for our gut microbiome, bad for the integrity of the lining of our gut, like chronic stress, day in, day out. That moment of stress while you're, sitting through an exam, that's okay. You're allowed that moment of stress while you're running late for work. But when the stress is day in, day out, not great. So having a meditation practice, listening to guided hypnosis, doing something each day to rebalance your central nervous system also is integral to good gut health, as is movement. It doesn't have to be, bodybuilding and Olympic weightlifting and marathon running, but movement also. Regular movement has been shown to improve your gut microbiome diversity, which I think is fascinating, but that's what the science shows.
And, at one level it's fascinating. At the other level it makes sense, because we know for, propulsion, which is peristalsis, is the medical phrase of your gut movement. So to move the food through your gut, sitting is unhelpful, walking is more helpful.
Totally more helpful.
Or swimming, or whatever sort of movement you do will improve, therefore, the passage of the food through, which is also good. I mean, it's very Goldilocks-y, isn't it? We don't want it to go too fast so that you end up with diarrhea. We don't want it to go too slow so that you end up with constipation. We just want the food to move through the gut at the optimal rate.
That's right. I love that you just said Goldilocks then. When my son was eating his hemp seed porridge this morning, he was telling me the story of Goldilocks, and he's like, and it just right.
Beautiful. I love that. So there we go, the 5 R's.
It's simple, doable, powerful, and like pretty much everything here we've mentioned is, if not free, it's not exorbitantly expensive at all. These are very, very affordable, simple, powerful ways that you can nurture your inner garden, and it's essential. It's essential to every single part of your health, including
absolutely
weight loss.
So much so that this is the focus for our topic for the month for our
is.
Momentum members. So for those of you who are unaware of Momentum, it is our follow-up program to the 12-week Mind-Body Rebalance, although once a year we do open it up to the public.
We do.
And each month we pick a topic to do a deep dive on, and just a little reminder, a refresh. Sometimes people just need a little a little memory jog, if you like, to go, yeah, you know what, might be thinking of myself here. My kombucha has been sitting in its jar for a couple of months untended. It's time to get it back out and nurture it and feed it, and it will produce for me beautiful fermented drink that I love, delicious, and my gut bloody loves it. So there we go.
Yes. I'm praising all of your cooking and everything. It's like you're like my food preparation guru, Lucy. But I have started doing what you showed me ages ago with using milk kefir with cream. So you end up with this lovely kind of sour creamy type kefir, which I'm enjoying that. Having a spoonful of that each day and a little spoonful of sauerkraut as well. I love both of those things.
Yeah, I love that. And kefir is great, especially if you've got cream that's getting close to its use by date and you're thinking, oh, what am I going to do with it? Yeah, you just bang it into some grains and let it sit on the bench for a few days, and voila, you've got sort of a sour creamish type concoction.
And if this sounds too hard, gorgeous people, you don't need to make your own fermented products. You know, you can buy a good quality yogurt or I don't make mine sauerkraut, for example. I buy my sauerkraut from the refrigerator section. From the refrigerator section from my supermarket. I say refrigerator section because you want to make sure that it's still alive, that the live cultures are still in there. If you get canned sauerkraut, it's not necessarily a bad product at all, but the canning, heating process or jarring process kills the bacteria. So it's not probiotic, it's just interesting cabbage. So you want to get from the fridge.
Yeah, another great place is farmers markets where people do homemade, pickles, because pickles are also the cucumber pickles, whatever they're called. I love them, and they're probiotic.
Yeah,
So,
if you get them from someone's made them, or you get them from the refrigerator section, absolutely, they're great. Pickles, pickles, sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, kombucha, apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar is a great probiotic food. Make sure it's got the live cultures, or the mother, as they sometimes call it, in it. And you could have a teaspoon or tablespoon of that a day, and that would have the same effect.
Amazing. All right, lovely friends. You've probably had a gut full of us now.
That's right. I'll follow our gut and we'll wrap it up here.
Indeed. We will see you next week.
Bye-bye, gorgeous people.
The information shared on the Real Health and Weight Loss podcast, including show notes and links, provides general information only. It is not a substitute, nor is it intended to provide individualised medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor can it be construed as such. Please consult your doctor for any medical concerns.